Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Aparna Vatve, faculty at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. This module is about International Conventions on Climate Change. It is part of the Environment and Society paper. In this module, I will first introduce global warming and climate change. We will look at its impacts in the world. We will also try to understand what is being done at global and national levels to combat climate change. In the end, we will try and understand what we as individuals can do to prevent climate change. In India, we are used to 3 seasons: summer, winter, and monsoon. Indian calendar is linked to the natural calendar. This seasonal calendar is undergoing change. Sometimes we have hailstorms in the middle of the winter. Dry and hot periods occur in the midst of the monsoon season. Cyclones, droughts, floods are a regular news on Indian TV. Older people find it very difficult to understand what is causing these changes. Unusually hot summers, heavy rainfall, frequent droughts disrupt the life of people. Everyone from farmer to scientist, rural and urban areas knows that the climate is changing. It is becoming more and more unpredictable all the time. Ecosystems, plants, animals and humans are all suffering from the climate change. It is now very difficult to predict what the future will hold for us. Climate change refers to the changes in the world climate caused by global warming. There is a marked rise in the global average temperatures near Earth's surface. Over last 130 years, annual global temperature has shown as increase. 10 warmest years on the record since 1880 have occurred since 1998. In the 20th century, the average sea level increased by 17 centimeters. Snow cover on the northern hemisphere was lost. Global warming was caused by the greenhouse effect. In the cold countries, greenhouses or hothouses are built for growing tropical vegetables. These houses have glass walls and glass roof. This helps in trapping warm air and sunlight inside. The internal air then warms enough to be able to grow tropical fruits and vegetables. This is the reason why warming of the earth is known as greenhouse effect. It is not actually a true description of what happens. The earth actually gets warmer due to trapping of radiation near Earth's surface. This is caused by the increased level of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and other greenhouse gases like methane. Increase in the greenhouse gas concentration is mainly due to heavy industrialization and fossil fuel use. This is the reason for increase in the global average temperatures. Earth's climate record can be read in the rings of the tree. It can be also read from the ice core on the poles. Growth of coral reefs gives us indication of what the climate was in the past. The climate record of nature shows us that the global average temperature has been stable over long periods of time. Only during the 20th century, Earth's average temperature started to increase. It increased by about 1 degree. Small changes in temperature correspond to very large changes in the environment. Global warming can be seen through the rise of average air and ocean temperature, rise of the ocean waters, melting of snow and ice caps on poles and on the mountains. Science has proved this beyond doubt, but there are still more people who feel that the science is misleading and they doubt the climate change. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, is a scientific intergovernmental body of United Nations. It is set up on the request of member governments. IPCC is dedicated to the task of providing the world with objective, scientific view of climate change and its political and economic impacts. It projects additional global warming over the 21st century from 1.8 to 4 degrees Celsius. The effects will vary from region to region. The first and the most obvious effect of global warming is the widespread climate change. It is leading to the temperature changes and rainfall changes. There is an increase in extreme weather events in the last few decades. Droughts have become very common. India has suffered from many droughts. In 2015, drought spread across all the mainland of India. Rainfall was way below expected. There were heavy crop losses. A completely opposite effect can also be seen in other areas. Global warming can cause heavy rainfalls in some places. This again leads to crop losses, waterlogging, and disrupts life. Frequency of cyclones has increased in many parts of the world. East coast of India is prone to large and very intense cyclones, all because of global warming. In Europe, people have suffered heat waves. In France, people died due to heat wave because they were just not used to high temperatures. Snowfall in winter has reduced in Europe and in America. These changes are affecting crops, livestock, fisheries, and all the humans who depend on these. Due to the global warming, seas expands, sea level rises, melting of glaciers and ice sheets, warming of the ocean temperatures, all lead to changes in the weather which we cannot even predict easily. The Arctic Ocean is expected to become free of ice in summer before mid-century. Several fragile ecosystems like coral reefs are bound to collapse if this happens. The natural biogeochemical cycles will suffer. Plant and animal breeding, dispersal, migration, pollination are all linked to global temperatures and rainfall patterns. Each of these will be affected terribly if climate change continues. Some of the plant and animal species are very specific to the microenvironment in which they live. Global warming will change these microenvironments and lead to extinctions. Amphibians, that is the frogs, are supposed to be in danger all over the world. Increased temperature can actually benefit disease vectors and pathogens. They can cause more diseases in humans. Malaria has spread in all the tropical countries. Quality of air, water, and food is already affected. All of these changes lead to economic losses and breakdown of marginal economies. Global warming has had profound effects already on agriculture, forestry, grassland, livestock, and fisheries. Species and ecosystems on Earth have evolved to live within a certain temperature range. When it is exceeded over short time, they cannot adapt. Loss of one species will eventually lead to loss of other associated species. One species of amphibian, the golden toad, is already believed to be extinct as a result of climate change. Decline of sea ice reduces polar bear population. Their primary habitat is lost. The fish on which they feed are also changed. Migration patterns of birds and butterflies have changed due to changing seasons. Higher sea temperatures have led to major coral bleaching events. When the ocean water gets too warm, the corals will expel the algae living in their tissues. This causes the corals to turn completely white. This is known as coral bleaching. Coral reefs in America and Australia support large tourism industry. Great Barrier Reef is visited by millions of tourists. In India, thousands of people visit coral islands in Andaman and Nicobar Islands and in Lakshadweep. Loss of coral reefs will lead to major economic losses due to loss of tourism. Once upon a time, Himachal Pradesh was very famous for its apples. Kulu Valley in the state of Himachal Pradesh had large apple orchards. But in the last 15 years, there have been massive crop failures. Apple growers blame this on the changing climate. They believe that the climate now is too warm and cannot support apple production. They have changed to vegetable and fruit growing. Maldives is the lowest lying country in the world. The average height of Maldives is just 1.8 meters above the mean sea level. It is a group of only small islands. Scientists have estimated that melting polar ice cap could rise the ocean level by about 2 meters by the end of this century. If this happens, Maldives will be submerged in the sea. The president of Maldives, Mohammad Nasheed, pledged to become fully carbon neutral by the year 2019. But it is of no use because the other countries in the world also have to reduce their carbon emissions. One single country cannot do this. Climate change poses a serious risk to poverty reduction and development. IPCC assesses that 20 to 30% of plant and animal species are in danger of extinction. So far, we have looked at what is global warming and what could be its effects on the world. Now we will look at some of the efforts ongoing to reduce the carbon and prevent global warming. The international response to global warming focused mainly on mitigation measures. They looked at reducing the greenhouse gases and enhancing carbon sequestration. Carbon sinks are the natural ability of trees, other plants and soil to soak up carbon dioxide. Plants temporarily store carbon in wood, roots, leaves and in the soil mass. Carbon sequestration can be increased by protecting natural systems and restoring the degraded vegetation. Plantation is one way of doing it. Use of efficient fuels can also help in reducing carbon dioxide. Renewable energy such as solar energy or wind energy can reduce carbon emission. Recycling of waste can also help. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, is the main international policy instrument. It addresses climate change and aims to stabilize the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. In 1997, UNFCCC supported the Kyoto Protocol. According to this, industrialized countries must reduce their combined emissions of 6 key greenhouse gases by at least 5% in relation to the 1990 levels. This should have been done between the period 2008 to 2012. Global Environmental Facility, Clean Development Mechanism are all playing a role in climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies. They address diverse objectives. They talk about priorities of the North and the South countries. Bilateral agreement between industrialized country and developing country mandates reduce greenhouse gas emission under this convention. Under the Clean Development Mechanism, industrialized countries must invest in projects that increase economic productivity and reduce local environmental problems in the developing countries. Many efforts can also be done at national level. We can shift to the renewable energy and transform our energy systems to cleaner fuels. This way, we can depend less on coal and fossil fuels. There is a need to increase vehicle fuel efficiency and try to use alternative fuels. In some parts of India, we have already shifted to alternative cleaner fuels. In some places, ethanol is being mixed with petrol to reduce fossil fuel use. Main responsibility of carbon reduction is with the government. It can make policies for cleaner technology, alternative energy, and reducing use of fossil fuels. At the same time, it is also important to reduce the deforestation of tropical areas. Developed and industrial countries are mainly responsible for the overuse of fossil fuels. Industrial processes contribute to the greenhouse gases, but it is the people living in developed countries are the ones who suffer the most because of climate change. Less developed countries need help to combat climate change. They require technological help and economic help. For such cases, financial mechanisms have been created. World Bank has funded biogas project in Nepal. The idea is to develop biogas use as a commercially viable, market-oriented industry. Biogas will provide clean fuel for cooking in rural households. Subsidies can help make biogas plant accessible to poorer households. Traditional fuel sources like wood, kerosene, and agricultural waste can be replaced by biogas for cooking. Every single biogas plant can reduce 4.6 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent annually. At the same time, women will save 3 hours daily because they don't need to create fuel wood if there is biogas at home. They will have more time for childcare and education. Biogas fuel stores also reduce indoor pollution and improve health of women and children. In 2016, Paris Agreement on climate change came into force. This agreement deals with greenhouse gas emissions, their mitigation, adaptation, and finance. It will actually start in 2020. So far, 137 out of 197 parties have ratified this convention. The first of this session was in Marrakesh, Morocco in November 2016. For the first time, Paris Agreement brought together all nations for this common cause. It wanted to take ambitious measures to combat climate change. Central aim of Paris Agreement is to keep the global temperature rise in this century well below 2 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels. According to this agreement, it will try to strengthen the ability of the countries to deal with the impacts of climate change. It will support action by developing countries and most vulnerable countries in line with their own national objective. The agreement also provides for enhanced transparency of action and support through a transparent mechanism. India ratified Paris Agreement. India was one of the early entrants into this and could actually pressurize others into committing. Because of our population, we are the world's 4th largest carbon emitters. We are responsible for 6% of the global carbon dioxide emissions. China accounts for 28% because of its industrial growth. United States of America is responsible for 16%, European Union for 10% of the global carbon dioxide emissions. But this comparison is not truly representative of the global situation. We need to look at per head or per capita carbon dioxide emissions. If we look at it this way, India has the 10th position. Our per head carbon dioxide emission is far lower than the developed countries like America, England, and Australia. Lifestyles of most of the Indians is more climate friendly than these countries. As per our initial commitments, India plans to reduce its carbon emission intensity by 33 to 35% from 2005 levels over the next 15 years. India plans to produce 40% of its installed electric capacity from non-fossil fuels by 2030. This will mean that India will have to shift from the coal-based power generation to renewable energy sources. It will have to use solar, wind, and hydroelectric power. India has given a commitment to increase its forest cover by 5 million hectares. Along with this, we have also committed to protect our existing green cover. India demanded finances and technology for all the developing countries to help them with low carbon economy under the new rules of Paris Agreement. We have looked at some of the actions taken by the international and national governments. What can we do on individual level? The main principle is to conserve ecosystems and use as less electricity as possible. Activities of each of us generate some carbon dioxide. If we can calculate how much carbon dioxide each of us generates, it is known as carbon footprint. Carbon footprint can be calculated for organizations as well as for different groups. You can take a look at many of the freely available carbon calculators on the internet. We have to take very simple measures to reduce our carbon emissions. Switch off the light anytime you are not using them. Reduce the use of television, mobiles, and other luxury products. We can support organic cultivation and try to reduce fertilizer and pesticide use. Something as simple as using a pressure cooker can reduce our use of fuel. Cycling, walking to areas nearby can reduce fossil fuel use. At the same time, we need to promote alternative energy uses like solar lights and wind farms. One has to be a wise consumer if we want to reduce climate change. These are measures for reducing carbon emissions. We can also try and offset the carbon we generate. This can be done by planting vegetation and protecting green cover. Maintaining green spaces in urban areas, sustainable use of natural resources are some ways of carbon sequestration. There is enough literature available on the climate change if you want to read more about it. Please take a look at it. Also try to make others in the society aware about the effects of climate change. You can take a quick look at our e-text, which gives details of what one can do to prevent climate change. Essential reading section gives books, websites, and other material which gives information about global warming. I hope you have learned something about climate change from this module. Thank you for being with us.